For 78 years, it has been America's most infamous cold case, a crime so brutal, so bizarre, it transcended fact to become a dark Hollywood legend. The Black Dahlia murder, a mystery that has haunted generations, spawned countless theories, and remained, officially, stubbornly, unsolved. Until now. On October 20, 2025, a book is set to be released that makes the boldest claim in the history of the case. It's not another theory, it's a declaration. Black Dahlia Avenger, Case Closed. This definitive edition contains over 150 pages of new investigative material, archival documents, photographic analysis, and stunning law enforcement validations that promise to finally end the speculation. The story of how this case was cracked is not a tale of a dusty file being reopened at LAPD headquarters. It is a story far more personal and far more disturbing. The investigator who dedicated over 2 decades to this relentless pursuit is Steve Hodel, a highly decorated 24-year veteran of the Los Angeles Police Department, a top homicide detective with one of the highest solve rates on the force, and the man he identified as the sadistic killer of Elizabeth Short was his own father, Dr. George Hill Hodel. For years, it was a shocking, almost unbelievable accusation, but the 2025 update brings the ultimate validation. After reviewing the complete case file, the man who prosecuted the Manson family, Los Angeles County Head Deputy District Attorney Stephen Kay, made a stunning pronouncement: case solved. This is the story of how a son's horrifying discovery unraveled his father's dark secrets and closed the case on a Hollywood nightmare. Los Angeles, January 15, 1947. In the quiet, undeveloped neighborhood of Leimert Park, a local housewife named Betty Berzinger was walking with her 3-year-old daughter. In a vacant lot on South Norton Avenue, she saw something pale and unsettling in the grass. Her first thought was that it was a discarded department store mannequin, broken at the waist. As she moved closer, the horrifying reality set in. She grabbed her child and ran to the nearest house to call the police. What she had found would become the most notorious crime scene in the city's history. The victim was 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, an aspiring actress from Massachusetts. Her body had been subjected to a level of savagery that stunned even the most hardened detectives. It had been severed in half at the waist with surgical precision, a rare procedure known as a hemicorporectomy, which cuts through the lumbar spine without breaking bone. Her corpse had been completely drained of blood and scrubbed clean, indicating she was killed elsewhere and brought to the lot. Her face was carved with a grotesque, permanent smile, a Glasgow smile, stretching from the corners of her mouth to her ears. And most bizarrely, her body was deliberately posed, hands over her head, elbows bent at right angles, legs spread apart, a macabre work of art put on public display. The discovery ignited a media firestorm. Reporters from the Los Angeles Examiner and Herald Express descended on the scene, contaminating evidence and even answering police tip lines themselves in a ruthless race for a scoop. It was the press that gave Elizabeth her immortal moniker, the Black Dahlia, a dark twist on the popular 1946 film noir, the Blue Dahlia, and a nod to her rumored preference for black clothing. In one of the most egregious examples of journalistic malpractice, reporters called Elizabeth's mother, Phoebe, pretending her daughter had won a beauty contest to extract personal details, only to reveal the horrific truth of her murder afterward. They then flew her to Los Angeles, hiding her from the police to protect their exclusive story. The official investigation was massive but quickly spiraled into chaos. Over 750 officers from multiple departments were involved, but their efforts were swamped. More than 60 people, mostly men, came forward to falsely confess to the crime, wasting invaluable time and resources. Days after the discovery, the killer began to taunt the authorities, mailing a package to the Examiner containing some of Elizabeth's belongings, including her birth certificate and an address book. Like the body, everything in the package had been wiped clean with gasoline to destroy fingerprints. Leads, including an investigation into medical students at USC, went nowhere. The combination of a media circus, a flood of false leads, and a cunning, meticulous killer who left no physical evidence at the scene ensured the case went cold. Elizabeth Short's identity was consumed by the myth of the Black Dahlia, and her murder became the stuff of dark legend, a cautionary tale for a post-war America anxious about the ambitions of independent young women. For over 50 years the legend festered. Then, in 1999, the case took a turn so strange it could only be true. Following the death of his 91-year-old father, retired LAPD detective Steve Hodel began sorting through his belongings. Hodel was no amateur sleuth. He was a cop's cop, a man who had spent his career in the trenches of Hollywood homicide, investigating over 300 murders. He was a man trained to find the truth, no matter how ugly. Tucked away in a box, he found a small photo album. Inside were family portraits, many taken by the famed surrealist artist Man Ray, a family friend. But toward the back, 2 photos of a young, dark-haired woman caught his eye. A jolt of recognition, deep and instinctual, struck him. He didn't know why, but he knew who he was looking at. It was Elizabeth Short. His investigation began that day with a single, haunting goal: to prove his father's innocence. Dr. George Hill Hodel was a man of profound contradictions. He was a certified genius with a tested IQ of 186, a musical prodigy who became a brilliant physician graduating from UC Berkeley and UCSF School of Medicine before eventually becoming the head of the Los Angeles County Social Hygiene Bureau. In the 1940s, he was a pillar of LA society, an affluent doctor who moved in elite artistic circles with the likes of director John Huston and Man Ray. He was the patriarch of a family living in one of Hollywood's most unique architectural landmarks, the Sowden House on Franklin Avenue, a Mayan-inspired mansion that would become central to the investigation. But behind the facade of respectability was a hidden world of darkness. Dr. Hodel led a secret life of decadent parties, multiple affairs, and a deep fascination with sadomasochism and the darker side of surrealist art. This private world erupted into public scandal in 1949 when his own 14-year-old daughter Tamar accused him of incest. The trial was sensational, and though Dr. Hodel was ultimately acquitted, it was this event that first placed him on the LAPD's secret list of suspects for the Black Dahlia murder. Decades later, Steve Hodel would learn that during the trial, Tamar had told authorities she believed her father was the killer. For Steve Hodel, the investigation became a psychological ordeal. He was forced to reconcile the memory of the father he knew as the great man with the monster emerging from the evidence. His journey was a Shakespearean tragedy. A son, a man of law and order, compelled by duty to hunt his own father, a man of profound and hidden evil. At the center of this drama was the Sowden House itself. More than just a home, its bizarre, fortress-like architecture, a cave-like entrance, a windowless facade, a labyrinthine layout, seemed a physical manifestation of Dr. Hodel's own psyche, brilliant and artistic on the surface, but impenetrable and monstrous within. It was a labyrinth that Steve Hodel now believed had once held a minotaur. As Steve Hodel dug deeper, the pieces began to form a coherent, terrifying picture. His father's life provided the motive, means, and opportunity for the crime. The surgeon's signature. The original investigators quickly concluded that Elizabeth Short's bisection was performed by someone with medical knowledge. Steve Hodel discovered that the specific technique used, the hemicorporectomy, was taught in medical schools in the 1930s, the exact decade his father was a medical student. Furthermore, Dr. Hodel had practical experience beyond the classroom, having served as the sole surgeon at a remote logging camp where he would have honed his skills with a scalpel. The killer's most audacious act was a signature of his profession, and Dr. Hodel was one of a small number of people in Los Angeles who possessed that specific, gruesome expertise. The surrealist's canvas. But why the bizarre posing? Why the grotesque smile? The answer, Steve Hodel believes, lies in his father's obsession with surrealism. Dr. Hodel and the artist Man Ray were close friends. When Steve compared the crime scene photos to his father's favorite art, he found chilling correlations. The pose of Elizabeth's upper body, arms bent at 90-degree angles above her head, is a near-perfect match to Man Ray's famous photograph, the Minotaur. The horrific lacerations on her face bear a striking resemblance to another of Man Ray's works, the painting Lover's Lips. The crime was not just a murder, it was a piece of performance art. As Steve Hodel would later state, Elizabeth's body was my father's canvas, his scalpel was the paintbrush. This connection explains the crime's most baffling elements, as the premeditated work of a killer who saw no boundary between artistic expression and sadistic violence. The murderer's lair. If Dr. Hodel was the killer, the Sowden House was the crime scene. It was his residence from 1945 to 1950, perfectly bracketing the murder. For decades, this was only a theory. But in 2013, Steve Hodel brought in a team with a court-certified human remains detection dog named Buster. In the basement and around the property, Buster gave multiple alerts, signaling the scent of human decomposition. Soil samples were collected and sent to Dr. Arpad Vass, a leading forensic anthropologist at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Dr. Vass's analysis of the soil confirmed the presence of chemical markers that were human-specific, indicating that human remains were, or had been, present in the vicinity. For the first time, modern forensics had linked the Hodel residence to a death, providing powerful corroboration that Elizabeth Short was tortured and killed within its walls. The killer's own words. The most damning evidence, however, had been buried in a secret district attorney's file for 50 years. In 2003, Steve Hodel, with the help of D.A. Stephen Kay, unearthed the file on his father. It revealed that in February and March of 1950, an 18-man LAPD D.A. task force had secretly bugged the Sowden House, recording Dr. Hodel's conversations. The transcripts captured what amounts to a confession. In a conversation with an associate, Dr. Hodel is recorded saying, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, they can't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary anymore because she's dead." The tapes also recorded him discussing payoffs to law enforcement, and a moment where a woman's scream is heard from the basement, followed by the sound of a pipe hitting an object. The paper trail. The physical evidence continued to mount. Steve Hodel submitted samples of his father's handwriting to a top forensic document examiner who compared them to the taunting notes the killer had sent to the press. The conclusion was a match. Steve also uncovered receipts for 50-pound bags of cement purchased by his father just days before the murder. This was significant because a cement sack containing watery blood had been found near the body dump site, believed to have been used to transport the severed body parts. The cover-up. But if the DA's office had a taped confession in 1950, why was Dr. Hodel never charged? Why was the investigation abruptly shut down? The answer lies in the rampant corruption of the post-war LAPD. As the head of the county's VD clinic and a known provider of illegal abortions to the elite, Dr. Hodel was privy to the darkest secrets of LA's most powerful figures, including high-ranking police officials. He had leverage. The wiretaps even caught him discussing his connection in the DA's office and the best payoff he'd ever seen. The evidence suggests that Dr. Hodel blackmailed his way to freedom. Shortly after the bugs were removed, he sold the Sowden House and fled the country, living abroad for the next 40 years while the Black Dahlia case remained frozen in time. He had committed the perfect murder, protected by the very system sworn to catch him. This brings us back to October 2025. Steve Hodel's new book promises to present the final pieces of the puzzle, including what he calls forensic proofs establishing the Hodel, Sowden House as the original murder location. But the most powerful new weapon in his arsenal is the unequivocal support of the legal establishment. Stephen Kay, the veteran head deputy DA, is a man who knows Los Angeles murder better than almost anyone. After reviewing all of Hodel's evidence, both old and new, he stated for the record that he would have no reservations about filing 2 counts of murder against Dr. George Hodel. His final conclusion gives the case the resolution it has lacked for nearly 8 decades. Case solved. To present a complete picture, it is crucial to acknowledge that the Hodel theory is not the only one. Over the years, other serious investigators have proposed their own suspects. A truly expert examination requires considering these alternatives. Former Los Angeles Times journalist Larry Harnish, a prominent critic of the Hodel case, has identified Dr. Walter Bayley as a compelling suspect. Bayley was a surgeon who suffered from a degenerative brain disease known to cause violent behavior. Crucially, his home was located just 1 block from where Elizabeth's body was found, and his daughter was a friend of Elizabeth's sister. More recently, author Pugh Eatwell, in her book Black Dahlia, Red Rose, argued that the killer was a bellboy and former mortician's assistant named Leslie Dillon, possibly acting at the behest of nightclub owner Mark Hansen, whose advances Elizabeth had reportedly rejected. Eatwell's theory points to a different crime scene, a bloody room at the Astor Motel, and another layer of police corruption to protect Hansen. Suspect: Dr. Walter Bayley. Proponent: Larry Harnish. Key evidence: 4 was a surgeon, lived 1 block from the body dump site. Office was near Short's last known location. Daughter was friends with Short's sister, suffered from a degenerative brain disease causing violence. Key evidence against: counter-arguments. Less direct evidence linking him to Short personally. Theory is less comprehensive than Hodel's. Harnish himself has not claimed to have definitively solved the case. Suspect: Leslie Dillon. Proponent: Pugh Eatwell. Key evidence: 4 alleged knowledge of crime details, connection to Mark Hansen, alleged bloody motel room crime scene, theory of police corruption protecting Hansen. Key evidence against: counter-arguments. LAPD investigation in the 1940s officially cleared Dillon, providing him with an alibi in San Francisco, criticized for ignoring exculpatory evidence. Suspect: Dr. George Hodel. Proponent: Steve Hodel. Key evidence: 4 surgical skills, hemicorporectomy, wiretapped confession, surrealist art connection, Sowden House forensics, handwriting match, DA endorsement. Key evidence against: counter-arguments. Evidence is circumstantial. Steve Hodel's personal bias. Critics claim he misinterprets evidence. While these alternative theories present intriguing circumstantial links, they lack the sheer weight and breadth of the evidence stacked against George Hodel. Neither Dillon nor Bayley has a recorded confession. Neither has been linked to the crime by modern forensic science, and neither case has received the stunning validation from the lead prosecutor of the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. The convergence of surgical signature, artistic motive, a forensically linked crime scene, a paper trail, and a taped confession creates a case that is, in the eyes of the lawman who would have tried it, complete. The story of the Black Dahlia is ultimately a story of 2 tragedies. The first is the brutal murder of Elizabeth Short, a 22-year-old woman with dreams of her own, whose life and humanity were erased and replaced by a lurid, one-dimensional myth. She became a symbol, a ghost, a puzzle to be solved, but rarely was she remembered as the person she was. The second tragedy is that of her Avenger, Steve Hodel, a son who, in seeking the truth, was forced to confront an evil more profound and personal than any case he had worked in his long career, and to accept that the monster he hunted shared his own name and his own blood. Dr. George Hodel died in 1999, escaping justice in a court of law, but perhaps justice can take other forms. After 78 years of silence, the exhaustive work of a detective who happened to be a son may have finally delivered a verdict in the court of history. After decades of being a myth, a mystery, and a monster's canvas, perhaps now the story of Elizabeth Short can finally be told. Elizabeth Short, 1924 and 1947.
If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe for more.